There was a discussion between Briahna Joy Gray and Norm Finkelstein, and there was one part of the discussion that it reminded me of a conversation that I had with Garland Nixon over a year ago about phrases, right? So during this part of the interview, Norm Finkelstein talks about his disagreement with the slogan "From the river to the sea," how he feels as though, in reference to the pro-Palestinian movement, that's actually not a good slogan. Bree has a different opinion about that. And what I've started to notice, and I really think maybe this is a generational divide that's happening here, because I noticed the conversation that I had with Garland Nixon about defunding the police. I noticed Garland Nixon said it was a bad slogan and it gives people the wrong idea and da-da-da. I was like, well, no, it means to defund the police and he was like, yeah, I know. He said, but it just wasn't a good slogan. Whereas it seemed like more people from my generation seem to be more okay with it. So is it a generational thing in the sense that maybe people of younger generations, maybe we're not so focused on a slogan of a movement? Let's get into this conversation, because I thought this actually ends up being a little bit somewhat of a debate, so to speak. The interview didn't start out that way, but it's this particular piece here where they start to talk about the slogan.
Now, I was talking specifically about college campuses. And so the question is, should we be defending full freedom of speech, or should we be defending restrictions on speech in the name of hurt feelings? And I think it's intellectually bankrupt, and it's politically a disaster, and that's why it now backfired. So now they can use the argument that Claudine Gay was insensitive to the feelings of Jewish students. And unfortunately, the so-called left, which I don't believe is a left, the so-called left handed that argument on a silver platter to the Ackmans and the other apologists to the state of Israel. It wasn't a disaster.
But drill down, Norman, if that were Ackman's only leverage, if his only tool was to say, ha, I got you, I flipped my argument back on you, now you're being insensitive to Jewish students, and so therefore Claudine Gay has to go, you don't believe that that would have been enough, right? It's not.
Let me pause there for just a second. Just to clarify, because I don't want people to get confused, and I know I've mentioned this on another episode before, but I want to mention it again, just in case you didn't see that episode. Claudine Gay actually did tell the students not to use the phrase "from the river to the sea." She did actually condemn that phrase. However, by the time she did that, I think it was too late for people like Bill Ackman, and also she didn't punish them the way that he thought it should have been. Basically, she didn't go as hard at them as people thought she should have, as Zionists thought that she should have. So I did just want to add that, because I don't want people to assume that she did not condemn that. She actually did. There was an article on the Harvard Crimson where she did condemn the phrase and everything. So just FYI.
Not that, I mean, I take your point. He was able to deploy that as a rhetorical device in the furtherance of his agenda, the same way he was able to deploy the plagiarism accusations. But what it seems to me is that he's the ground zero problem here is that he's a billionaire, and that he was going to root around in the mud until he found something that was going to justify his goal.
Briahna, you're totally right. But that's why I used the expression, why hand it to them on a silver platter? Why make it easier for them? Why use a slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," where it can lend itself to the interpretation of, we're getting rid of all the Jews?
So, see, this is the same. I have to go back and watch. This is the same similar thing to what Garland Nixon had said to me in reference to the slogan "defund the police." He's like, why use that phrase? Because it makes people think, oh no, all the cops are going to be gone and no one's going to protect us. And the argument I gave to Garland Nixon is I said, well, cops don't really protect us anyway. Police solve what 0.02% of crime. So they're not really protecting us in the first place. But with this particular issue with the pro-Palestinian movement, my whole thing is like, I guess like when Norm says, well, why give that to them on a silver platter? Like, I don't care about the slogan. And I think that's just where I kind of stand. I don't care about the slogan. If I see that people are being oppressed, that their water is what 90% dirty water is what Israel is allowing them to have, that Israel can cut off the electricity whenever they want to, and they have before. If I see that Israel has been starving these people, they've oppressed these people, they've occupied them, they fenced them in, and they've taken people out of their homes, and they're still kicking people out of their homes in the West Bank. To me, the last thing that I'm worried about is the slogan. I'm not thinking about no slogan. And another thing I want to bring to attention as well, I get what Norm is coming from, but the other thing I want to mention is that it doesn't matter what slogan you use. Anything that you use against the state of Israel is going to be deemed as anti-Semitic. That's the thing. That's the thing that people have to understand. You can make up a whole new slogan. There's a protest tomorrow in DC. It's going to be a huge one. They can come up with a whole new slogan. But if it's against the state of Israel, Zionists are still going to call it anti-Semitic. So you can try to tailor this however you want to appease the Zionists. But if I'm out there marching in the streets, I'm not trying to appease the Zionists. See, that's the thing. I'm not trying to appease the Zionists. I'm not trying to appease any racists. I'm not trying to appease any of these people. I'm standing up for the rights of people who are oppressed. And if that means that some people get their feelings hurt, then they just get their damn feelings hurt. Period.
You can make a simple statement. Equal rights for Palestinians in Palestine. That's not open to sinister
So we can talk about this.
Yes, but they will push back against that too, Norm. Someone like Netanyahu will push back against that. And Netanyahu will say, well, that means that the Israelis will have to leave. If we give equal rights to the Palestinian people, then what does that leave for us? You see where this goes? This is the kind of statements that they'll use. Well, we can't do that because then we won't feel safe. That's the thing.
Slogan. If you really want to talk about the slogan, we can talk about the slogan. I disagree with you about the slogan. I think specifically in the instance of Palestinian rights, because there's so much slipperiness and hasbara about what the quote unquote solution is, and so many Zionists hide behind the complication of it, and how if you say you want a one-state solution, well, how are you going to affect that? If you say you want a two-state solution, how are you going to affect that? There's so many settlements. There, it's so difficult. It's so complicated that, frankly, I think there is more power in rooting your call to action in the fundamental rights of Palestinians. Palestinians shall be free, and so you are forced to defend why you think the conditions they are living in under currently, which have been described as violations of how many human rights laws by all of these human rights organizations, actually is tantamount to freedom. Actually can be defined as freedom. It's on you to do that. If I make the simple put forward the simple proposition that Palestinians, wherever they live, anywhere on the universe, deserve freedom and equal rights in society.
Right. But you recognize, let me give you a historic example. Take the case of South Africa. There were two major tendencies within the South Africa liberation movement. There was one with the, obviously, the African National Congress, which called for one person, one vote. And then there was a second group, led by, I guess, Robert Sobukwe, if my memory serves. And that was the Pan-African Congress. And that called for South Africa for Black people. that the white people should go back to Europe. That was their argument. It's not completely illogical, obviously. However, the slogan, the African National Congress slogan, one person, one vote in one country, that was the one that won out. And that slogan was one that the international community would be amenable to. The idea of expelling all the white people in South Africa was the international community did not consider that legitimate. Now, you might think it was legitimate. And as you know, that is what happened in Algeria. In Algeria, all the whites, what were called the pied noir, the black legs, because they wore black stockings or black boots. I think it was maybe black stockings. They left about 1 million, the 1 million non-indigenous Algerians, they went. So they went back to France. Among them, for example, Albert Camus. And Albert Camus refused to support the Algerian liberation movement. He famously said, when he won the Nobel Prize, he was asked about, it was a very brutal war. The French killed about at least 1 million Algerians, about 6,000 French were killed. It was a typical colonial war with the typical numbers, the typical disparities, which we see now in Gaza. And Albert Camus, who played the role of, the conscience of France, he was asked, why aren't you denouncing what the French are doing in Algeria? And he famously replied, I love justice, but I love my mother more, because his mother still lived in Algeria. So I love justice, but I love my mother more. And so these slogans and their precision, they have real repercussions. And so
I feel like this is one of the reasons why movements don't take off, is because there's always something, right? Like, no, that's not the right slogan. No, that's not the right message we want to put out. No, we should only work with these people and not these people. No, we should not do this. We should do that. And this actually prevents us from having any type of radical, just freaking rage fest, like class movement in this country. That's why we can't have it. Because it's always that people always come in and like, well, no, I don't like that slogan. No, I want to be a part of this, but I don't want you to do any of these things that are being mentioned. Next thing you know, a whole year has gone by and the movement has never kicked off. In this particular example, by the way, though, obviously this movement has been up and going. And why do we need to now change the slogan now after the movement has already been going and people are protesting all across the world? Now all of a sudden we have to change the slogan? No, as I told you, it doesn't matter when reference to Israel. It does not matter what phrase you use. They are going to deem it as anti-Semitic because you are calling out the state of Israel. That just is what it is at this point. Also, if you now in turn change that slogan, you are now giving people like Zionists like Bill Ackman a win, because that's exactly what he wanted you to do. He already came into the academic spaces and made demands at the universities that he's no longer attending. And this speaks to the danger of a billionaire being able to come in and make decisions at academic institutions. Now you're going to let them infiltrate your movements and tell you how to talk in your movements out in the streets too? We really have to think about this. We really have to think about it.
I believe
Camus being a short-sighted schmuck does not the point make. I'm sorry, you cannot. I think that actually proves my point. You cannot base a movement, especially a movement that has generated organically slogans that have captured the hearts and minds of millions, including over 66% of Americans who already agree with the call for a ceasefire. We're sitting here criticizing a winning movement for not having a slogan that's sufficiently inclusive.
I wouldn't call it. Yeah, I wouldn't call it. The question is not. When the whole issue I can't discuss it now because it would take us too long. But when the whole issue of Black Power came up, and that slogan, I don't know, was Stokely Carmichael during the march, I think, from Selma, when he started to shout Black Power, and it was a big event. It was a big event. And Martin Luther King had very deep discussions with Stokely Carmichael. And he said it's not a good slogan because he said Black Power will convey the idea of we want your power, Black power versus white power.
I'm sorry, but again, I feel like some of those people might have been infiltrators in these movements. I really do, because the thing is that even when he's talking about the Black Power movement, for people back then to say, well, maybe I don't like the slogan because it implies this, it implies that. You have to understand, like, Black people were an underclass in this country at that point in time, did not have the same rights. Like this was not that long ago. That's the thing. Like when people talk about the civil rights movement, they make it seem like this was like 100 years ago. This was not that long ago. So to me, it's just like, let me get this straight. Why are we going soft on colonizers? Why are we going soft on them? I don't think we should soften our language for the state of Israel because I think it's an illegitimate state. And I think it's full of colonialists who kicked those Palestinian people out. And the ones that are left there are being tormented. Same thing with the Black Power movement. We should not go soft on colonizers, period. We can't keep trying to find a way to, we cannot continue to try to find a way to appease the very people that have been oppressing us. We can't appease oppressors.
And he said, you can read about it I think, in Cornell West's collection called The Radical Martin Luther King. King argued that you should use this. He said, I understand where Black power is coming from. He said, I have no problem with that. I understand the slogan. I understand the feeling of powerlessness, which now results in the desire for power. He said, I get all of that. He said, however, I think we should use the slogan of Black consciousness rather than Black power.
Black consciousness. This was to raise my fist in the air and write Black consciousness on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Norm, give me a break. Black power, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, Black Lives Matter. Look, Black Lives Matter was the most innocuous of slogans. Hey, guys, give me a second. Would you mind if I just assert a basic truth that of all the lives in the world, Black Lives Matter too? And we had how much discourse about how that slogan hurt too many white people's feelings? Because at the end of the day, it's not a logical objection to any of this. It's a fundamental rejection of the premise that Black Lives Matter and that Palestinians deserve to be free. And guess what? An hour.
Let's pause here for just a second because he brought up Black Lives Matter, right? What was the counter to that? See, this is what I'm trying to tell you. It doesn't matter what phrase you pick. The counter to that was all lives matter. People said all lives matter, and they were against the whole Black Lives Matter thing. All lives, right? So taking the focus specifically off of Black people and saying, let's just say everyone's life matters. Like that's what they were doing, right? To try to get your attention away from how Black people were being treated by the police. But the thing is, to that point, it does, like that Norm just kind of proved my point, which is the fact that it doesn't matter what slogan you choose. They will either Democratic Party will try to co-opt the slogan if it's beneficial for them. Other people will counter the slogan, especially if they feel that they're not included as part of it, regardless, whatever you pick.
Or so ago, Norm, you sat here and you said, I forget, you read a quote from one of these, but it wasn't Philip Roth, it was the other person that you were quoting.
Charles
You said
Silverman.
something along the lines of, if you don't believe, the inheritance that you have is Jewish supremacy. And if you let go, if you do not believe in Jewish supremacy, you're base, you're an animal, the options are supremacy or inferiority.
Every Jew feels it, he said. They may try to suppress it, but they feel it.
Right. And here's the point that I'll take. I don't think that people should have supremacist worldviews, whether they're Jewish or Black or Goyish or whatever they are. However, I do think that when you are a historically marginalized group without your own land. And this I identify very strongly with for both Jews and Palestinians, frankly, as a Black American. I strongly believe that when you are a historically dispossessed group who does not control your own government, does not control your own media, who has no ability to set the tone, who doesn't have your own educational institutions, does not have the ability to control your own destiny and create a reputation for yourself without the influence of people who literally profit off of your degradation. That you have to find a source of your own self-esteem somewhere, or you do become an animal. You do buy into the prevailing view of who you are, and to be a minority in this country, and I'm sure it is true of Jews facing persecution historically around the world and Palestinians scattered throughout the diaspora, that every day you wake up and you have to find some source of self-esteem to shield yourself against the onslaught of rhetoric that's telling you that you are nothing and you deserve nothing. And so these slogans are not just about how white people feel or how your oppressor feels and whether or not it makes you comfortable. It's a resource for the members of the community to find some sense of solidarity and confidence to continue an uphill battle that they are not likely to see the end of in their lifetimes.
I hear.
See, that's the point that I was making. It's not about, sometimes not every movement is going to make everybody feel comfortable. Some people will feel uncomfortable if they're not included. They're like, hey, what about me? Some people feel uncomfortable if it's something that they don't really want to see or hear about. I don't know. Americans are weird. Like, I've lived in other countries. People here become uncomfortable sometimes in ways that you just should not be uncomfortable. You know, we're a country, this country in particular, we are a people in this country. We're not even comfortable enough with our own sexuality. We're not even comfortable talking about sex in this country. Am I wrong? Think about it. You go visit some of the other countries. Go visit some of the other countries. They're not ashamed to talk about these things. We can't even talk about that. You can't do anything, right? No. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about that. We're just not comfortable, people in this country. People in this country just become uncomfortable for the oddest things. Like weird stuff. I was on the train the other day and this guy got on the train and like, he said hello to me and that made me really uncomfortable. I mean, that's us. That is this country. Like, someone says hi to you, we're uncomfortable. What happened to that? Someone holds the door open for you. Oh my God, this guy like held the door open for me. And I'm like, first of all, I like totally don't know you, dude. You're like a stranger and you held the door open for me. And it like really creeped me out. Like, who does that? That's us. So the thing is that we are used to being uncomfortable in this country at the slightest little thing. You can see the rest. I am going to head out because I am quite beat. You can see the rest, the full interview. It's a long interview. On bad faith, it's billionaires' anti-Palestine attack on academic freedom. And that portion I was covering there is when they talk more about the slogan. That's closer towards the end, but it's like 2.5 hour interview there. So check that out. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at some of the comments in the chat. Valley Girl Sabby. It's just, it's just things I hear people say. All right, let me get these super chats here, and then I'm going to rest my voice and stuff this weekend. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. From the river to the sea was okay when it was a Zionist slogan. Now that it's been co-opted by Palestinians, suddenly it's bad. Thank you, Sparky. Sabrina, you're absolutely right about whatever the Palestinian slogan. No matter what it is, Zionists will twist it. Thank you for the super chat, JNCC. Thank you for your great work. Thank you. Thank you, James. We need to speak more on Britain's involvement. Hashtag Balfour Declaration. That's right. Thank you, Sparky. Norm's great, but he's twisting the slogan too. Thank you, Elizabeth. Insight Jim. Want less war equals 0 weapons from the U.S. And thank you, New York Varsity. My problem is the way the Israeli government does their business, not with Jewish people. Ironically, the only reason I knew there was a genocide was from Jewish people. So no, not anti-Semitic. Geez, there you go. Thank you, 007. Hope you're feeling better. South Africa rocked it. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Sparky. Much ado about minutes. Do you mean minute or Menashe? Much ado about Menashe can stifle a movement before it gets momentum. By the way, Black Power was inspiring. I remember it. Thank you, Sir Bikes a lot. Baby boomers and some Gen Xers benefited from the U.S. empire. Millennials and Gen Z got screwed by the U.S. empire. That's why Norm is thinking the way he is. Oh, that's a good point, Sir Bikes a lot. I didn't think about that. And thank you for the super chat, Unemployed Scholar. Sabukwi had better stance than Mandela. Black people in South Africa are displaced on own land by white settlers. And thank you for that.